All right. Welcome, Tasha Lee, to Raw and Cooked Vegan.
Thank you.
Great to have you. Great to have you.
Great to be here.
All right. So could you start by telling us a little bit, how were you raised? What was your family's knowledge of nutrition, if there was any? Was it kind of a standard American situation, standard American diet situation? Tell us about that.
My family was kind of big, well, compared to my friends anyway. There were 4 of us kids.
Okay.
So we lived on a budget and we ate a lot of hot dish where it's just all the leftovers put together in a bowl. And macaroni and cheese was a budget food, so that's kind of what we knew of nutrition. Although I was diagnosed as a diabetic in 6th grade with type 1 diabetes, and at that point I was put on a very strict meal plan, so my family kind of started eating more of what I ate, which was like for breakfast it was 2 breads, 2 meats, a fruit, and a milk, and at lunch, with a vegetable. So we had different exchanges that we used for those. So we were at least eating a little bit of fruit and a little bit of vegetables, and dairy, made sure to get our dairy.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the symptoms you were experiencing before you got diagnosed? What were some of was it just blood sugar, like highs and lows? What was happening?
I lost a lot of weight. I remember being 49 pounds and 49 inches in 5th grade, which I think is really small. In the summer before, it was just insane thirst and having to go to the bathroom all the time. And so the main thing was I just got diagnosed because I wet my pants on the first day of school, and that was kind of a big deal. So we thought it was a bladder infection. I didn't really notice, blood sugar swings. I mean, I just was thirsty.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And for the viewers, can you clarify or define for us the difference between type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes?
Sure. Type 1 diabetes is typically, it used to be called juvenile diabetes. Usually it's kind of brought on by having a bad illness. I mean, this is usually kids will get it either in toddler years or in early teenage years, and for me it happened after chicken pox, and so the body is fighting something off, and then diabetes happens.
Okay.
And so it's autoimmune, and now that I'm learning all this stuff about nutrition, who knows? Was it because I was drinking a lot of milk? I don't know. But type 2 was generally adult onset, but nowadays it's adults and kids, and it's a lot of times related to obesity or just even a lot of fat in the diet because I have friends that are not overweight and they have type 2 diabetes. So
okay. And isn't it also true that if you have a malfunctioning pancreas, is it that you could have type 1? Let's see, the insulin is generated by the pancreas, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so type 1s, their pancreas are not producing insulin, so we have to take insulin. And type 2s may still be producing insulin, but their body is resistant to it.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's kind of a big deal. Sorry, I forgot about that.
No. That's totally cool. So you have been taking, we could say, manufactured insulin since the 6th grade.
Right.
Okay. And do you have to give yourself injections, or can you take that orally?
I've taken injections. I'm now on an insulin pump, so it's still injection. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you changed your diet, and then when they gave you this new kind of type 1 diabetic diet, did your urine become more normal? Did your weight normalize? Did it help? Was it difficult to follow? Tell us about that transition.
Well, the main thing that helped was getting on insulin. But at the time, the insulin we were using was kind of long term. It didn't take effect immediately. So you'd have a rise of the insulin's, the peak effectiveness. And so when you take it, I took it I don't know, I think initially I took it twice a day, and then at one point I was taking it 6 times a day. So you've got these rises and falls. So I'd have to eat at specific meal times so that when the insulin was peaking, I wasn't going to have, a blood sugar crash or something.
Right,
so
right.
It was, well, I can't even remember your original question.
That's okay. That's fine. All right. I don't think I can either.
But that was why I had to eat the specific meal plan that was the main reason, and we had to eat at specific times.
So it helped to keep the blood sugar relatively level, right?
Yeah. Yeah, along with insulin.
Right. Okay. All right. And how would you characterize your fitness from that time on? Did the diabetes affect your fitness? Were you able to participate in sports at all?
I was a soccer player, and I loved sports, so no, it just made it more complicated because blood sugars are affected by everything. So I was pretty active. Okay.
All right. So that's interesting. Now, and it's interesting too that your whole family kind of got in line with your diet, which may have indirectly helped them. Huh? I mean, I know this is still not. We're going to talk about improving your diet further, but in some senses, you could say that this diet was better than what you were eating prior to that, right? Or would you not say that?
I think for me it was. I mean, sort of. What happened as a result of being on the diabetic diet was, I think I had to really restrict my carbohydrate intake, and then I developed an eating disorder because I was so restricted, like, you have to have a certain number of carbs and you can't have more than that. And in the past, I never restricted that. If I wanted candy, I ate candy. But we didn't have, like, a bunch of junk around our house just because it's expensive. Well, I don't know. Nowadays, I think junk is less expensive than healthy stuff. But we didn't have a lot of junk around. So, yeah, it was maybe healthier. I don't know. But I think I really that was when I really started craving carbohydrates. And, like, the ice cream, I had a half a cup of ice cream was my special snack in the evenings, and that was it. But I just, like, crave stuff all the time. And so, I don't know, maybe there were some benefits, but I think there were also downfalls.
Gotcha. Negative. Yeah, gotcha. Okay. All right. So how long did you follow that, and at what age did you start to consider tweaking this diet a little bit, or actually kind of did you start by going vegetarian first, or were there ethical reasons? Was it health reasons? Tell us about that.
It's a funny question because how long did I follow it? I followed it when I was under my parents' roof, kind of, because I got in trouble if I didn't follow it.
Okay.
But I started sneaking food, and then I would kind of binge in secret. And then when I went to college, it was like I just ate whatever I wanted, and I binged all the time. And that was when my eating disorder just blew up. So I wasn't following the diet. I mean, I kind of had in my mind that this is what I'm supposed to eat, but I didn't follow it at all. So it was just, after that, it was worse than standard American diet for my college years and multiple years after that.
Okay. And did you continue taking insulin 6 times a day?
Well, that's when I started taking 6 times a day. I wasn't taking it that many times a day previously.
Okay.
So it was 6 times a day plus whenever I would eat. But, I mean, my blood sugars were terribly out of control because I would binge on this huge high-fat, high-carb meal and had no idea how to do my insulin for it. And I really wasn't in a mindset to be taking care of my diabetes. I was in a mindset to binge. So I would have seizures from low blood sugar drops, and then I'd have way high blood sugars. I mean, I had terrible A1C. Shoot, I forgot your question again.
No, that's okay. That's okay. So what I'm curious about, this is kind of an aside. We're wading into the diabetes, and we're going to come back to the general progression of your nutritional development, let's say. But it's often, I think, understood in maybe the popular consciousness that if you're a type 1 diabetic, you'll never recover from that, and you'll have to take artificial insulin for the rest of your life. And I think with type 2 diabetes, it's recognized that you can recover from it if you assume the right kind of diet. Like I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Bernard, and that's one of his primary successes is getting people off of, they're basically not diabetic anymore because they've corrected their diet. But now in your case, have you been taking insulin so long that that's not possible, or as you've changed your diet, has your need for insulin reduced?
Well, as I have changed my diet, I've become more sensitive to insulin, but the diet that allows me to be more sensitive to insulin, this low-fat, high-fruit one, is obviously a lot more carbohydrates than I was eating in the past. So I still do about the same amount of insulin as the other patients that my doctor sees, but I'm eating 3 times as many carbs as they are. Okay.
All right. So was it in college that this started to dawn on you that you might try a different approach to eating or when did that happen?
Oh, it was a long time down the road. Yeah, I had 15 years of eating disorder craziness, and then actually about seven years ago, I finally found a way out of it, and I recovered. And part of my recovery process was asking God how to nourish my body in an unselfish way, because I've been very selfish for many years. And, being selfish was killing me. So I just kind of had to listen, open my mind, and see what was out there. And so at that time, somebody sent me a newsletter from the Batenko family about diabetes. And so I heard about Sergey healing his type 1 diabetes, and I was like, that's not possible, but I kind of felt like I owed it a shot. So, and there are other testimonials on that page about type 1 diabetics at least improving. And so that was what opened my eyes to the raw food world. And I just kind of didn't know anything about how to eat. And so I just started getting all the books from the library on raw foods and trying all these different methods and seeing what worked and what didn't. And that's how I ended up eating fruit.
All right. Excellent. Now, can I ask you, would you be willing to discuss at all the eating disorder, or would you rather go around that?
Yeah, we can talk about it.
Okay. Was it bulimia, anorexia? Was it?
I would call it exercise bulimia. So I was binging, and then I was trying to purge through excessive exercise.
Okay.
But I never was successful at purging all those calories I was binging on.
Okay. And you've probably looked into that a lot. Would you say the major cause of that is a kind of unhealthy idea of how women should look in society? What would you attribute to the major causes of an illness like that?
I mean, looking back on it now, I think, through my process after recovering, I've also, done a lot of experimentation with foods and seeing how different things affect me. And I've come to some conclusions about the eating disorder. My personal conclusions, I think that, number one, restricting the carbs was a major contributor to it. Because when you're restricting, your body's like, give me food, and then you binge. I mean, I hear this from so many women who are on diets, and maybe they didn't have problems before, but then after this diet that they're on, then they start binging. And it might not be like a full-blown eating disorder, but, binging on making a box of brownies and binging on, eating the whole thing, that's not really very healthy. And so I think restricting carbs was really, really huge in it. And then also there's emotional stuff wrapped up in it. I was very angry about feeling controlled, having all these restrictions placed on me as a diabetic. I was, so I think that there was emotional things that I was trying to
kind of rebel against.
Yeah, and stuff down with food, Yeah.
So
I really needed, part of my recovery was actually working through all that stuff. So I wasn't binging instead, as a way out. And then
that's a great point. That's a great point that people can use many different things to suppress emotions, and one of the easiest is food, because you have to eat. So, and a great way to suppress or not feel your emotions is to stuff it by eating. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great point. Great point.
And the third thing I think was really big was once I started eating whatever I wanted, I was eating a bunch of foods that are created to be addictive. They're created for everyone to be addictive. You can't eat just one. It says on the potato chip bag.
Yeah, like potato chips. Name some other foods like that. Like
things that I binged on?
Yeah.
Oh, everything processed. I mean, I especially binged on pizza and ice cream and like Little Debbie's snacks, macaroni and cheese.
Yeah.
Those were my big ones.
Okay. All right, and you said you kind of went through, was it 7 years of questionable eating and this exercise bulimia. Were there other diets that you tried during that time? Did you ever try like a paleo approach? Did you ever, like you mentioned low carbs, so obviously the popular consciousness was keep the carbs down. If you're exercising and you want to be fit, keep the carbs down, and you found that didn't work. Were there any other specific diets that you tried before you came to the raw approach?
Well, during my 15 years of eating disorder, I was eating crap, and then when I started, it was just immediately, I did try some things to try and get better or to try and control my eating. So I tried like Weight Watchers, and I tried a food plan for food addicts. And that was like, I got rid of the processed foods, and it was high in animal products. They wanted to couple an animal product with every carbohydrate to avoid getting a blood sugar spike.
Right.
But those were like, once I recovered, I mean, those were all kind of like trying to control the mad binging. It was nothing about health. And then once I recovered and was seeking health, then that was when I entered the raw food world, and I tried like different raw food approaches. So I did try a low carb, and I actually got down to 1 unit of insulin on that plan. It was low carb, raw food, but obviously if you're not eating carbs, I mean, that's what you do the insulin for, is the carbs. So
did you start losing weight like dramatically?
I did lose weight, and then I became I was like a skinny fat. And so as soon as I quit that, then I was like, woo, major put on the pounds. Because I was eating a lot of fat, but I was not eating a lot of calories.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. All right. So when you made this transition, tell us again, I think I've seen this gentleman, the name of the guy, he recovered from type 1 diabetes. What's his name? Oh,
Sergey Botenko.
Okay, Sergey Botenko. And it sounds like there was a spiritual component to your recovery as well. Is that accurate?
To my recovery, yes.
Okay, great. And we can talk more about that also. But tell us what you first did when you started reading these books about raw food, and did you immediately just whole hog go 100% raw? Was that easy to do?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say it was about 3 years of 1 step forward, 2 steps back. No, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Right.
So but still during my first 3 years, it was still a lot of experimentation. So, I ate a lot of high fat raw, like as long as it's raw. That was one thing I tried. And so then I just lived on pecans, so that wasn't great.
Were you eating chocolate and coffee, that sort of thing?
I was never a big chocolate person. I did kind of like almond butter and honey and raisins. That was one thing that I ate a lot. But I would eat raw, and then I think it was more as I found out about the fruit-based diet. at that point I felt like when I first went into raw, I was like, oh, this is great. Nuts have always been a no-no food. I can eat as many nuts as I want. Yes. So, so that wasn't too hard. But then when I found out about fruit-based, I tried it and I was like, this works for my body, but I have to give up all of my nuts and I just have to eat fruits and vegetables? Ew. I don't like fruits and vegetables. And that really felt like something I did not want to do, except that it made me feel better. So then I would like do some fruit, then go binge for a couple weeks on, fast food, drive through, get all the something different from all the different fast food places. And then after I felt like total crap.
Smorgasbord, huh?
Oh yeah. And then I would like go back. So during that time I was getting to experience my body saying again and again, this doesn't make me feel good. So it was kind of like it was really hard to give up my emotional attachments to those foods. And I think that's what really took a long time. So then the last 4 years have been fruit-based. So my first 3 were kind of, and even like the first 2 years of fruit-based, I still ate some cooked food because I didn't want to do high fat. So then I would like do some low fat cooked, but for me, I couldn't just stick with the baked potato. I had to get everything that went with it. And so I learned that it's just better for me to stay all raw. Okay. So my last 2 years have been raw.
Okay, gotcha. Now tell us a little bit about that, like getting the numbers of calories. Like, can you characterize for us an average day? Are you eating 30 bananas a day? I think you live in an area where you have access to good produce, right? So what's an average day? Like, how many calories do you think you eat a day?
Well, I've done at first I did do 30 bananas a day. I did like 3,000 calories per day. That did not work for me. I gained a lot of weight. I felt bad, and I had deficiencies that I didn't know about, and so I was trying to eat more calories to feel better, and it was actually making me feel worse because my body was sick and needed me to be eating less so it could work on healing.
Now, this is really interesting. So you were eating 30 bananas a day and you were gaining weight. Is that right? Yeah.
Well, I wasn't eating 30 bananas a day. Some days I did eat 30 bananas a day, but 3,000 calories, yeah. 3,000
calories a day of what you might call raw, high-quality fruit, and you were gaining weight.
Yeah. That was before I lived in Florida.
And were you exercising? Were you exercising at the time?
I started out my first month doing a lot of exercise. I was teaching aerobics, and then my body crashed because of my deficiencies. So then I was totally sedentary for a very long time.
Okay. All right. So this.
I was eating more calories for energy, but I wasn't exercising.
Okay.
So I was totally not earning any, I was not earning the calories I was eating.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And, but now, like the past 2 years, it sounds like maybe you found a good balance. Would you say that your diet could be characterized as 80-10-10, and it's primarily fruit, with some vegetables and maybe some nuts? Is that kind of what you're doing now?
Well, what happened, I'll just try and very quickly say, from when I went from the 3,000 calories a day, and then I met Don Bennett, and he helped me learn that I probably had to address my deficiencies, so, and I needed to sleep more instead of trying to eat more for more energy. So I really, at that time, I started listening to my body and doing more sleep, fewer calories, and just eating when I desired food. When I was doing 3,000 a day, I was trying to shove food in, and I actually stopped liking to eat. So I enjoyed it much more when I just ate when I felt like it. So I've never, actually since then I stopped counting my calories. I just ate whatever I desired. And it started out doing no overt fats because of diabetes. And then I got an essential fatty acid deficiency. So then I started using some chia and hemp. Today what I eat is whatever we have that's ripe and available. And I've done calorie calculations, and it ends up my range is 1,500 to 1,900 per day, what I need for my body. And I tracked 1 week of just eating, listening to my body, and that's where I ended up being as an average for those 7 days. So, I mean, sometimes it's in the 2,000s and sometimes it's like 1,500 or less. And it's just really, I mean, some days I desire more calories and some days I desire fewer calories. So,
very interesting. And would you say, could the insulin you take be considered a form of caloric intake?
I don't think so. The insulin?
Okay, so the insulin is just facilitating the assimilation of sugar. It's, okay.
It's the key that opens the door to the cell so that the sugar can go into the cell and get used.
Right, gotcha. All right. But that's very interesting. So between 1,500 and 1,900 calories. So probably a lot of people would think that's low, but you look very healthy to me. You look fine. And you, do you do much exercise?
Well, because of the deficiencies, I lost all my fitness, and I had to start at 0 and work my way up. And my body kept crashing every time I tried to like exercise. So I stopped with the whole exercise thing, and I just started walking. And then once a week, I would do body weight training, resistance training, as much as I could without making my body crash. So, and that's kind of what I've continued for the last few years, is just walking probably like 2 miles a day, and then once a week, body weight training.
I love it. I love the simplicity of it, and I love that you're kind of listening to your body and letting that guide you. That's beautiful. And also, let's highlight for the viewers, if they don't know, Dawn Bennett is a tremendous resource. Health101.org, I think it is. Tons of information there. And Dawn Bennett's been kind of fighting this fight for a long time, while people didn't even know what this is all about. So he's really been fighting the good fight for many years. And he's also a humble guy, and he's not like out to do this for dollars, which is so beautiful and so rare, But while I'm mentioning a website, can you tell for the viewers, Tasha, the name of your YouTube? I think you have 2 YouTube channels. Can you tell us what those are?
Sure. I've got 5 YouTube channels, but I'll tell you.
Oh, tell us all 5. Tell us all 5.
That's okay. I'll tell you the ones that are relevant. My main one is, it's like YouTube.com, and the / thing is Healthy Skinny Beauty. Yeah. But, it's Tasha Lee, Fruitful Healthy Living. That's my main one about health and fruit. And then I have one that's more geared toward diabetics. And that, one that's just type 1 is type 1 Tasha. And then one that is fruit and diabetes is fruitarian diabetic.
Cool. Okay. All right. Now, you mentioned this one gentleman who has overcome type 1 diabetes with a raw food diet. Is that did he do raw food, or is he? But he's vegan. He's definitely vegan, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. And your experience is you're kind of using the same insulin you used before, but now you're getting a lot of your calories from carbohydrates. But you haven't noticed any diminishing in terms of the amount of insulin you need to take.
Well, since I am more sensitive to insulin, if I were eating the amount of carbs that I were eating before, then I would be taking less insulin.
Okay.
But I don't actually think the way I was eating before was very healthy for my body. So I think my body needs carbohydrates. Yeah. So I do have, some of my rates are lower. So yes, I would say in general I take less insulin in some ways. I'm definitely more sensitive to it. Sergey Patinko, the one that I mentioned, he was, his mother found raw foods pretty close to when he was diagnosed. And it seems like the people who have been, there's another guy, Alex Romanoff. I know those two both were doing like green smoothies, and they put fruit in their green smoothies, and they were able to get off their insulin. Yeah. Doing it close to diagnosis.
Yeah.
there's another guy named Kurt Tyson who did raw foods close to his diagnosis, but he did the low carb raw foods, so he doesn't eat much fruit, and he's also stayed off his insulin.
Okay.
So those are 3 people that I know of. And then there's like Robbie Barbero and Cyrus Kambata, who've been doing this, much longer than I have. And they've, really reduced the amount of insulin that they need and are much more sensitive to insulin.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Are all of those that you listed type 1 diabetics? Yeah,
those were all type 1s.
Yeah, that's amazing in itself because, the popular consciousness is you got type 1, that's it. So this is like miraculous. You just listed 5 people who have totally shifted their insulin intake through this approach to diet. There's also something interesting I wanted to ask you about that you brought up. You made this statement earlier, and it was essentially that the idea of an animal product in your diet is automatically unhealthy. Would you say that's your position now? Any animal product is automatically unhealthy.
I think that there are, I know people who are doing a paleo diet, and they've gotten a lot healthier than they were previously.
Okay.
Taking out the processed foods. And my choice is I don't want to include animal products. I think I'm healthier without them.
Yeah.
But there are, people who are definitely healthier than on a standard American diet by getting rid of, junk food, and then they still include animal products. I mean, I don't think I don't think I would be as healthy as I could be. I might appear healthy, but long term, I'm concerned about long term too. And I mean, I think that's another thing about the diabetes is I don't want the long term complications. So eating this way, I didn't mention these, but I stopped having low blood sugar seizures eating a fruit-based diet. And that was huge for me. I used to have them all the time with low blood sugars. And so now I have a much better control of my diabetes because I'm not scared about having a low blood sugar and having a seizure.
Can you describe to us what happens when somebody has a low blood sugar seizure? Is that like fainting in the middle of the day, like you're standing in the grocery line and you pass out because you don't have sugar? Is that what goes on?
It probably depends on the person. My kind was the grand mal seizures where you're going,
oh man,
like
okay,
that.
right.
And then you wake up from it and everybody's staring at you like. So I'm glad to not have those because I always end up with a chewed up tongue and like your head would be pounding and just so exhausted, and I'd injure my shoulder sometimes and then interferes with exercise. So there's a lot of reasons I'm glad to not be having those seizures anymore.
Absolutely. All right.
And the other thing about the diabetes is I've gotten rid of my diabetic retinopathy, which is a diabetic complication. And so there's other complication, and that's on the fruit-based diet. And there's other complications that I think I was heading toward with a combination of bad control and unhealthy foods. And so I feel like this is going to put me in the best position for optimal health, including avoiding long-term complications.
Beautiful. I love it. Obviously your main focus in your life has been this diabetes. Can you tell us, were there any other illnesses not necessarily associated with diabetes that you had when you were younger, which also faded as you took on this new lifestyle?
Well, the epilepsy.
Yeah.
So my main symptom of the epilepsy was the low blood sugar seizures, but I also had random seizures. It wasn't just diabetic. So I'm off of my epilepsy medication. And that was against medical advice to go off of my medication, but I've been okay. Stopped having those seizures.
Good for you. So. I love it. Did you have anything like acne when you were in high school, or so there were no other illnesses aside from diabetes?
Oh, there were plenty of things. I kind of forget. I have like this list from head to toe of things that improved. My teeth got better. My menstruation stuff got better. I used to be sick all the time, and I was kind of an obsessive hand washer because I didn't want to get a cold. And I still had colds all the time. And so that's gone away. Let's see. Your eyes. My eyes are clearer. I have a sense of smell now. I didn't used to be able to smell things. I seem to heal better or recover from exercise better. I'm much more flexible than I used to be. I was embarrassingly inflexible, and I was a personal trainer. So now I'm all sorts of things.
Gotcha. Now it's interesting you bring up the menstruation. Can you tell us did your flow get lighter as your diet got cleaned up?
Well, actually, my history was that it was just so irregular. I mean, and they would put me on medication to try and make me have a period, and sometimes that would work, sometimes it wouldn't, and then just depending on what I was eating, looking back at it now, like when I was going back and forth from raw to junk, I could really see changes in. Do you really want to know this?
Well, I think it's great because one of my favorites, Dr. Pam Popper, I'm sure you know her. She talks about menstruation, ovulation, and menopause kind of becoming non-issues for women when they take up a low-fat vegan diet. Now, she cooks food. She's not a raw fooder like you, but I think generally this is true. You go raw-fat, a low-fat vegan, and for a lot of women, all these issues disappear, which I think is in itself should be on the covers of newspapers every day, right? I mean, I have 4 sisters, so I know a little something about this. Right?
Okay.
But yeah, tell us. So it just got better for you.
Well, yeah, like I could see on the times when I'd binge, it would be like really heavy, really long cycle, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And as I started eating like the fruit stuff and low fat, it was just very light, and it was like became regular for the first time in my life, like once a month, 2 days, very light. I mean, like, oh my gosh, all those medications they put me on to try and make this happen, and
this is so amazing because it's so for the vast majority of the population, they don't even realize what normal is. And it's like I would say yours is an example of a normal, healthy, regular ovulation. But most people, it's so unhealthy, they think it's normal to have PMS. They think it's normal to have a heavy flow, to suffer through it. I would say your case is what's really normal, and it's become normal because you've taken on a much more natural diet, But anyway, there's 2 kind of huge topics I just want you to address briefly for me. One is, obviously, it seems like you took this approach to life on for health reasons. Did you also, along the way, become interested in some of the ethical aspects of this way of eating?
Yeah, I think it's kind of been growing on me because, like, my story is I used to hate animals. I mean, I think just.
Well, when you say hate animals, you mean you just didn't really think about them, or or
they're like annoying. Like we had an annoying dog, and I was like, oh.
Sure.
And then my husband's parents had a dog, and I was like, oh, I hate dogs, just keep it away from me, and I don't know, just kind of all the animals are just a pain in the butt, just don't want to mess with animals. And
right.
As I've been eating this way, it's really changed, like, to where I'm like drawn to animals, and I love them, and I just stare at them, and I watch them, and, we have palmetto bugs in Florida, and, they're this disgusting, huge roach thing, but it's not a roach, it's a palmetto bug.
I know,
And, like, I scream when we don't want them in here, but I just can't kill them, I'm like, I can't do it.
Good for you.
So things are changing.
All right. And then kind of tied with the ethics, or it's another area, but they sometimes overlap, is the environment. What have you learned about the effects on the environment of eating the way you eat now?
I haven't really thought about it that much, and I have friends who are environmentalists, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so like, do you recycle? I'm like, oh geez, come on, like making me feel guilty for throwing it in the trash. And so, I think just along the way, like we started, I feel terrible throwing my fruit scraps in the trash now. Like I really want to put it in the compost, but I'm like, I just feel bad doing this. And so, and then, well, with this mold, I recently have health problems from living in mold. So I'm really, really conscious of pollutants and chemicals and stuff now. And this just like in the last few months where I'm like, why do you have to wear a perfume? Why do you have to spray that strong chemical and like clean with that? Just use natural things, but thinking more about how it's, like the ocean. I go to the ocean to be a safe place for me. It's fresh air. But then I'm around seaweed. I'm like, the seaweed is really bothering me. And learning more, like, well, seaweed collects all these, like, the oil spills and radiation and all the pollutants out in the ocean. And so it's very selfish for me, but I'm like, why you guys have to dump your stuff and mess with my clean air? But I just know that it's going to, it's not going to get better if we keep on living the way that we're living. And I don't really see, aside from the fruitarians and people who really, people who are doing things to contribute to a better environment.
Yeah.
It is a concern now. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And since we're here, can you tell us a little bit about, if you want to, if you're willing to, what was the spiritual component of this change? Had you been spiritual from a young age? How did it influence these changes? And what's your spiritual orientation now?
Do you mean with the eating disorder or everything in general?
Yeah, kind of like, with the eating disorder and then, if you think there's an association.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, I've been a Christian since I was little, and I wanted to be a good person. But what happened, I was doing it because it was the right thing to do. And what happened with the eating disorder was
when you say you were doing it because it was the right thing to do, you mean you were being a Christian because it was the right thing to do?
Oh, no, I was, being nice to people because it was the right thing to do. Or going to church because it was the right thing to do.
The base following the 10 Commandments because you're supposed to.
Right, yes.
Yeah, okay.
So then, with the eating disorder thing, it was like, I'm just so angry. I want to do things my way. But it was just this one little thing. I just want to eat my way. But it kind of grew and permeated my whole life, took over everything to where all I could think about was myself and my food, and I just want to binge. And I couldn't really see it at the time, but looking back on it, I can now see that I was living a very selfish existence. And I cut off all these relationships in my life, and through the eating disorder recovery process, it was a spiritual process. It was but basically it was about learning to live an unselfish life of service to God and to the people around me. And so I had to do like all these inventories and of like all the selfishness, the resentments, the fears, like all this junk in me, and ask God to remove it and learn to live differently, and then go to all these people that I had hurt, and tell them I was wrong. I'm sorry. So make things right with the people all around me. And so basically I was getting clear between God and clear with all the people around me. And
beautiful.
And as I did that, it was like, whew. I was free. I became free. And I didn't like the idea of, the big thing at the beginning of my recovery process, they said, Tasha, You're never going to have your way again. And I was like, oh, no. Now it's about what God wants. I'm like, oh. But I've learned to love it, just being like, well, just asking for God's direction all through the day. And what should I do in this instance? What should I do in this? And just seeing that, my ways, they land me in the dumpster stuffing my face. That's what I've seen again and again and again, because then I create all this junk with the people around me and between God, and I just can't deal with it. I'm just going to eat. So it's just really great to not have that stuff, cutting me off from people and from God anymore. And so, eating this, when I had to ask how to unselfishly nourish my body, and ended up, I was trying all these different ways and ended up feeling like eating the fruit was the most unselfish thing that I could do. And not just because it made me feel better, but also because whatever health problems I create by what I'm eating, my husband is affected by that. He's going to be paying for things, and all my family is going to have to be listening to my miserable stories and come visiting me in the hospital. And
I love this point that you're making, Tasha. This is a huge point. You could say that our health is our gift to society, and our illness or our disease is a drag on society. So it is unselfish to be healthy. It is unselfish to live in a way that you do not get sick so that you don't drag on society. Huge point. I love that point. And so oftentimes, in the public, there are these arguments made, well, I just want to eat my hamburger, as if that's an individual action that's isolated and not related to anyone else. Well, when you eat your hamburger, it affects all the rest of us. Mm-hmm. When you eat a bunch of crap and you end up with a coronary, it affects the rest of us. So, yeah, I love that point you're making. I'm gonna shift gears a little. Okay. Oh, go. You thought of something? Go ahead.
Well, to finish answering your question, when I ended up eating this way, and it felt like the most unselfish thing to do, and it also cleared the channels spiritually, to where, like in the past, I said I did things because it was the right thing to do. Like I was nice to people because it was the right thing to do.
It was
and now
more of a dogmatic rule-based thing, and then it became what?
Well, now it is, just as I said, I'm attracted to animals now, and I care about them. Like, my heart, like, I love people now, and when they're telling me their stories, my heart breaks for them, and I just want to hug them and help them and care for them. And so all these things that I was doing before because it was what I was supposed to do, now it's just what I desire to do, and I feel like this is, in the Garden of Eden, they were eating a fruit-based diet, and I think that this is how we humans function to our I think that I'm supposed to have this empathy for people. I'm supposed to have this health and energy and spiritual excitement and connection and intuition that I didn't have when I was eating my crap foods. And so I think that spiritually, it's off the charts, because of, it's all connected because of eating this way. And
yeah, I love everything you're saying. It's like when you're more healthy, you're more in tune with the natural foods that serve you best. It's easier to be loving. You feel good about yourself. Your default is loving rather than selfishness. I love that. And I would say too, this is not, sometimes people get freaked out if you use words like religion or spirituality or belief systems. This is not limited to any specific religious belief. It's not even limited to the term of spirituality. If you're an atheist out there, this is about living in a way that enables you to interact in a more positive way with other members of society and to appreciate this beauty that we live in, to kind of automatically be more open, gregarious, more giving. These tendencies come out more fully as your health increases and you get more in tune with your natural diet. I think that's right.
I feel like when I went to Woodstock Fruit Festival, it was like all these happy, nice, loving people. And I'm like, wow. You know, a lot of times if I go to church and it's like people who are grumpy because they're feeling sick because they ate their burger that you're talking about, you know, or
right.
Just a lot, like it really, what I eat really does, it can weigh me down, make me want to be isolated. I mean, I've seen this going back and forth. You can start to notice everything that happens. Yeah. And I just felt wonderful. Like, it was awesome at Woodstock Fruit Festival. It was just great. Awesome.
That's great. That's great. All right. There's a few nutritional items I'm going to throw at you, and I want you to tell us the conclusions you've reached for yourself on each one. Okay? So the first is vitamin B12.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Yes.
so regarding vitamin B12, do you take it? Do you think it's necessary for a vegan to take it? And if you do take it, how do you take it? Do you take it with shots? Do you take it an oral sublingual? Or are you a gardener and you grow your own vegetables, so you have soil on your vegetables and you don't think you need B12? Tell us your personal experience with it.
My personal experience is that I had a B12 deficiency. It was not like, well, I was low in B12. I was deficient according to some charts.
Right.
So I took one shot. This was at the beginning of all of my deficiencies. I've had a lot of deficiencies. Okay, so right at the beginning I took one shot, and then after that I continued to test my B12, and I found that I've not been able to keep my levels in range without supplementing. So I use a sublingual B12. It's a chewable tablet, and suck on it. Gotcha. It's like candy. Yummy.
Yeah. Is that the methylcobalamin that you take? Gotcha. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. How about now you're in Florida, so this may not be an issue for you, but what's your take on vitamin D?
That was my biggest deficiency, and that started when I was living up in the Midwest United States. And that's what killed me for years. So I definitely think it's important to test your vitamin D. But since moving to Florida, I still have to supplement. I test every 3 months to see what my levels are, and I've not been able to keep those in range without supplementing either. Even though I live in a place where you can get sun all year. And I do go out in the sun as much as possible.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting. Can you share with us some of the deficiencies associated with vitamin D deficiency? Some of the symptoms associated with vitamin D deficiency.
Oh, the symptoms? Okay. Boy, they seem to be pretty varied. The symptoms that I had was, my main one was extreme exhaustion. Just because I would, somehow it affects your ability to get the deep sleep that you need at night. So even though I was in bed for 16 hours, I couldn't get refreshed. So that was really, really huge, was the exhaustion.
Okay.
Yeah, that was my main one. There are probably other things. I know it's connected to diabetes, and it's connected with how you absorb other nutrients. Maybe it contributed to some of my other deficiencies. Okay.
All right. And I know you're probably familiar with this since you're friends with Don Bennett, but iodine, what's been your experience with iodine? Do you supplement with that? Do you get it in your salt? Do you eat sea vegetables? What's your take on iodine?
I also tested deficient in iodine.
Right. I'm sorry. Yes, I still do that wrong. Yeah.
I don't care. Iodine sounds cooler. I tested deficient in that, and so I've been supplementing for over a year now. And I've had a lot of symptoms connected with iodine deficiency, and they seem to be gradually improving, but I've also had other deficiencies too, so it gets kind of confusing, and also living in mold, which also causes deficiency. So it's all
complicated. Yeah. Now, having said this, you found you were deficient. I would imagine that ideally you would not argue for trying to isolate nutrients and put them in multivitamins and then take them that way. I would imagine your primary position is get most of your nutrients from food, from natural foods. That's the best source. But it sounds like you're wisely getting your blood tested, and for those few things that you find you're deficient in, you take them. Is that fair?
I used to take a vitamin on my other diets, and then when I came to raw foods, when I heard about the fruit-based diet, I heard, no, don't take supplements, you don't need them. Maybe if you get a problem, then you can take it until your problem goes away. And so I adopted that right off. I stopped taking my multivitamin, and it was bad news for me. It was a really bad idea. I don't like the idea of taking supplements. I wish I didn't have to. I wish I could just live on fruits and vegetables. I think that would be awesome, and it's a very ideal theory. I love it. Unfortunately, in the real world that I live in, apparently there aren't enough of those nutrients in the soil, so they're not in the foods I'm eating, so I am having to take them.
Yeah, it's interesting, too. I mean, I think you might say, since your caloric intake is relatively low compared to some folks, you could say that affects your nutrient intake, right? If you're averaging between 15 and 1,900 calories, you could say that means you're getting less nutrients than folks that are eating 3,000 to 4,000 calories, right?
Yeah, definitely. People who are very athletic and are eating tons and tons of calories are going to have less chance of developing the deficiencies that I got. But there are also downsides of being very, very athletic, So in listening to my body and seeking what works best for it, when I was doing all these exercise bulimia things and just all these triathlons and trying to keep going, and I was making my body crash. I was getting joint injuries. My knees are so bad because of, playing soccer. And so on the whole, I think that my body is better off with moderate stuff, walking, and then yes, that is a lower caloric intake. And so I do have to be mindful of things like that. People who are eating massive amounts of calories don't, they're not as close to the edge. Like, for instance, I've had essential fatty acid deficiency, and I've also had amino acid deficiency. And both of those, if you're eating very high amounts of calories, it's not going to be as much of a problem. But for me, because I'm eating a smaller amount of calories, and there is a certain amount of protein, a certain amount of amino acids, and a certain amount of essential fatty acids that you're supposed to get each day, if I'm eating, for instance, if I'm getting 5% of my calories from, 5 to 10% of my calories from fat, just by eating fruits and vegetables, it may not be enough of those amino acids and proteins.
Yeah,
for someone who's eating large amounts, then 5 to 10% of theirs is going to be plenty.
Right. I thought it was interesting you said earlier this essential fatty acid deficiency. Were you able to discern what those exact symptoms were from the fatty acid deficiency, or did you just see it in the numbers and so you started supplementing with it?
That was a symptom-based thing. It was so many things lead to exhaustion. That was one of my, it was after I treated the vitamin D deficiency, after I treated B12 deficiency, and I was still exhausted. And so I was like, what? So someone suggested, a lot of raw vegans tend to have issues with omega-3, omega-6 balance. And since I wasn't eating any overt fats at all, maybe that could have been my problem. So I experimented with the chia and hemp, and at the time I added in Udo's omega oil, 369, for a short time just to see what would happen. And it was like that first day I found an immediate difference.
Wow.
And what I noticed was I had this innervation, like my nerves, like everything just felt, I was so sensitive. It's hard to describe, but innervation is what, and I would be if I was rested and lying in bed, and I would still feel like so exhausted, but it was like, I don't know, kind of maybe after a good workout, you're just feel depleted, sort of. But that's what I felt like all the time. And when I took the fat that first day, it was like I got a fluffy pillow around my nerves. It was amazing. And I was getting up multiple times in the night to go to the bathroom. That was the first time I slept through the night.
Wow.
So then that helped me feel more energetic during the day because I was getting better sleep. And yeah, the enervation went away. And I started, so that helped with the exhaustion.
Very interesting. Now, can you tell us how many essential fatty acids you use, like, on a regular day? Do you put a spoonful of chia seeds in a smoothie? Is that how you take it, or how do you take it?
Well, it's complicated. I was doing a tablespoon of chia and a tablespoon of hemp seeds. And the hemp was to hedge against getting amino acid deficiency. Well, I got that anyway. And I think that was because of living in the mold. But so now I'm doing hemp protein powder, a lot of it. And it affects my blood sugar. As a diabetic, I can see when I take fat into my diet, I see what happens with my blood sugars. I have a continuous glucose monitor, so I can watch, like, everything. So when I started doing the hemp protein powder, it's got a little bit of fat in it, and the protein also affects my blood sugar. So since I started doing a lot of that, I don't really do the chia at the moment. Okay. So I don't plan to do it like this the rest of my life, but for the season I'm in, that's what I'm doing.
How would you talk about this with someone, you know, when vegans talk about the necessity of protein in the diet, you hear the argument that we don't really need as much as the, RDA says. We certainly don't need the quantities of protein that most people are eating, especially in the form of animal products. But it looks like in your case, doing a high raw diet or all raw diet, high in carbohydrates, you were deficient in amino acids. So do you think someone might say, well, hey, there's evidence that this is not a protein sufficient diet? How would you answer that?
I hate to scare people away, but I just share this is my experience. It might not be everyone's experience.
Right. Yeah. No, that's
cool. But this can happen, so.
All right. And so now, would you say it's hard for you to tell whether it was the introduction of fat only or also the amino acids that helped you feel better? You've noticed that each time you added one of these supplements into the diet, you felt better. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that first one with the fluffy pillow thing, I think that was just the fat. And then I got the amino acid deficiency just like, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 months ago. It was last summer. Can't do my math. But that had different symptoms, that I was taking chia at that time and I was eating chia. And so these symptoms for amino acid deficiency, like I read through all these symptoms that can happen, and I'm like, well, I have that. Maybe it is amino acid. I didn't want to try protein powder because my husband was like, you should try protein powder. I'm like, I don't need protein powder. But it helped him, and I had a similar symptom of, like, my legs kind of felt like they were falling out from under me, and I started trembling. That was the big thing. I was trembling.
Wow. Okay.
And so I gave it a shot, and it helped with the legs falling out from under me thing, and the trembling went away, but it would come back if I, like, skipped my protein powder or didn't eat as much. So I just kind of, and then I've continued to keep it at that level, but also, like, my exercising, my muscle strength, it improved so much. I feel like I was just in a holding pattern for a really long time with my exercise, and I wasn't really making improvements. And now just doing the same thing, I feel like, I can do chin-ups now, yay!
Awesome, awesome.
That's really exciting, but I don't think, I think that really adding the amino acids has really helped with that.
That's great. Now, you have these sites where you interact with a lot of vegans, right? Have you found that many of the folks that are communicating with you also find benefit from this kind of supplementation, amino acids, or is this something that's personal to you? What's been your experience in that regard?
Specifically amino acids?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, mostly, I mean, on all my videos that I've made about all my various deficiencies, I've heard from a lot of people who had, you know, similar experiences. So I'm like, wow, I'm not the only one. The essential fatty acids, I heard from a lot of people who were going totally overt fat-free that, or, you know, going really low on it, that they got similar symptoms and it was better when they ate fat. The protein, or the amino acids, I haven't met a whole lot of people that have the same thing. And I really think that it's, the mold is really a contributor to it, because on the list of deficiencies that people get from living in mold, there's amino acids, magnesium, and zinc are big ones.
Okay.
So, you know, I'm very curious to see what will happen when I'm in a clean environment for a long period of time. You know, will I not be getting all these deficiencies? And was that what was causing all these things over the years? I don't know.
Got you. Did you find out, were there like high levels of mold in your house? Was that what happened?
Yeah, well, we had toxic mold, but we didn't know it. But then once we moved this entertainment center that had the mold on it, and then the spores spread everywhere. And then we couldn't get rid of it, so we had to, like, get rid of everything. We've moved apartments multiple times, and, like, then you get this hypersensitivity to everything, so it's all pretty complicated. Oh, but on the protein powder thing, I should mention Cyrus Kambata. He's another type 1 diabetic that eats the fruit. He's been doing it for 10 years. He actually does the hemp protein powder raw. And he tried it because he was not experiencing gains muscularly, and is that a word, muscularly? So sure. Muscular gains, and so he tried it, and he said within a year it was just huge difference, and so he continues to take it. He said he feels so much better all around. So, all
right. And have you found that the adding these they digest well? You don't have any issues digesting them?
I haven't figured that one out yet. I'm still working on it. I've been told I need to be drinking more water since the protein powder is dehydrated. Okay. And then it gets complicated with food combining because I don't really want to be eating smoothies for all of my meals. So I just kind of want to throw it all in one smoothie, and that's not good for food combining. So it's a work in progress. All right.
Well, let's see. What else?
You know what? You asked me what I eat in a day, and I didn't actually answer that question.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, now that I said it's not good food combining, I typically throw all my supplements into.
Well, you know, not everybody food combines, so that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, right at the moment, until I figure out a better way, I'm currently throwing my protein powder and juiced barley grass powder. That was another thing. I got a mineral deficiency. Okay, so that has really helped with that. So I throw that in with like probably 5 to 7 bananas, mash it up, or, you know, during winter, dates and orange juice are in season, and they're both great, and I love putting all my supplements with that in a smoothie, and that's bad food combining as well, but it's really good. So I do usually one meal that is my supplement meal, and then the rest of the day I just enjoy. I mean, I try and make sure my supplement meal is also good. That's why sometimes I do the poor food combining, because it's got to be good for me to, you know. You know,
Tasha, a lot of people mix up stuff. I mean, I think too, a lot of raw vegans and some other vegans, you know, you can make the argument that once you get clean enough, the food combining becomes less of an issue. It's like if you're clean enough and healthy enough and the stomach is strong enough, but if you are suffering digestive complaints after eating some, then yeah, it's bad food combining, but I hear you.
Yeah. My husband will be glad when my food combining improves.
All right.
So yeah,
I mean, you're human.
Yes, yes. One meal a day. I've recently moved it to the end of the day because the protein, I don't know, it just seems to work better at the end of the day. So the beginning of the day, I've been starting with coconut water for hydration and electrolyte balance. For a while, I was doing just minimal water and just eating a lot of juicy stuff because I've had hyponatremia from drinking too much water, and so it just works better for me to hyponatremia, like where you throw your electrolytes out of balance by trying to, drink too much water. And
I'm so glad you said this. Because there seems to be a kind of force out there that is advocating huge quantities of water drinking, and I've always been suspicious of that. So, of course, the other is not good. Not drinking enough water is not good. But I go ahead and name that again. What is it called? Hypernatremia?
Hyponatremia. Water intoxication is another name for it. Natremia. Oh, I'm not going to go into the details because I'm not good at all that scientific stuff, but
still, very interesting point. Yeah.
So the coconut water has been good for that, and definitely I feel a lot better staying hydrated with like eating a lot of cucumbers the non-sweet fruits have been really helpful for me to hydrate. Lettuce helps with hydration, but typically my fruit is just like during mango season, I eat 4 mangoes as a meal, and
beautiful.
I love it.
That's like 800 calories, right? That's
sure. I don't count calories.
Yeah.
I do count carbs, and then I can kind of get an estimate of that.
But mangoes are great fruit, beautiful fruit.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
So, through this whole process, I've just found that my body responds better when I eat simply, and I have to conserve my precious energy. So I've just been doing a lot of mono meals this whole time. And I pretty much just eat fruit and supplements now. I don't really eat lettuce very much because once I started the juiced barley grass powder, my craving for tomatoes and salads just went away. And I don't really desire them anymore, but I was like eating 1 to 3 pounds of greens per day and still craving. And that was hard to digest all that. So I feel like I have a lot more energy with just eating fruit.
Yeah, tell us about that. 1 to 3 pounds. What does that mean? That's like 2 giant salads? That's like
like one of those big containers of mixed greens.
Yeah.
Like, that's a pound.
That's 1 pound, yeah. So 3 pounds, 3 of those, that's huge.
Yeah. It was hard to get it all in, I tell you what. A lot of green smoothies.
All right. I'm trying to think. We've covered a lot, and thank you for taking the time. Are there any? You've told us your YouTube channels. Do you also have corresponding websites?
Mhm.
You do. Okay. And go ahead.
Okay. So my main website is tashalee.org. That goes with. Well, that's kind of where everything stems out of. So I've got all my YouTube links from there. But I have another website that's called Fruitarian Diabetic. It's fruitariandiabetic.com. And on there I have like some stuff from Robbie and Cyrus and me because we're all kind of trying to reach the diabetics of the world. And then interviews with other like type 1s and type 2s who are either improving their type 1 diabetes by eating a lot of fruit, or type 2s who got rid of their diabetes or they're working on it. So just it's kind of a resource for diabetics. And then I have like blood sugars on there because people ask a lot about blood sugars and diabetes and fruit. So that's the one that's mainly for fruit and diabetes. And on there also is like the link to my Healing Diabetes with Fruit book, which is the type 2s who interviews with the type 2s who healed.
Oh, wait, okay. Can you tell us that title again? Slowly.
Okay. Healing Diabetes with Fruit. The subtitle is X Type 2s on a Fruit-Based Diet.
By Tasha Lee?
By Tasha Lee.
Nice. Nice. All right.
So I wrote that because I I got questions all the time, and I knew that people could heal eating this way, but where were they? Nowadays, it seems like they're popping up all over the place, and that's awesome. But at the time, I couldn't find anybody, so finally got people, like, there's 4 stories with just like in-depth interviews with all these questions and stuff that people throw at us all the time, and I wanted them to answer it.
Can people buy that book on your website?
It's
cool.
It's on the healingdiabeteswithfruit.com, or they can get it through the tashalee.org or the Fruitarian Diabetic. It's all linked together.
All right. Let's see. What else can we talk about?
You want to talk about deficiencies?
Sure.
So we talked about B12. We talked about D.
Yeah.
The mineral deficiency.
Yeah, you kind of said that briefly. Was that how did that come about?
I just started as I was introducing the essential fatty acids, the chia and the hemp, and Don said, it would really be a good idea to start eating just barley every day. And I'm like, okay, might as well. So then after a time period, I just realized that my cravings had gone away for the tomatoes and salads and stuff. And I had always done a pound of greens per day, because that's what I was told. You need to do this in order to succeed on a fruit-based diet. But it was growing the amount that I needed. I'm like, I don't know. I just figured that was normal because all these fruitarians crave tomatoes, right? Heirloom tomatoes. But I guess it was the minerals. And so I was told to eat the lettuce for the minerals, but I found that eating the juiced barley grass powder that I'm getting my mineral needs met. And so I don't really eat that stuff for minerals anymore because my digestion's better with doing the juiced barley grass powder.
Wow. How much is a container of that barley grass powder?
It's expensive.
Yeah.
The Just Barley was really expensive. The Daily Green Boost is just barley in a cheaper form. And we're doing like a juiced barley grass powder through Sunburst Superfoods, which is cheaper. It might not be as high a quality. I don't know, but that's what we're getting for now.
Is that like $30 a bottle or $40 a bottle?
I'm very disconnected from prices. My husband does the finances.
All right, that's cool.
So
you just,
the mineral. Oh, go ahead.
You just mix it up with water. You drink it with water.
It's actually better when mixed with food. So.
Okay. So with
mashed up with bananas is pretty good.
Cool.
Sometimes I would mash it up with dates. Sometimes with tomatoes, and then you get really flavorful tomatoes. Yummy.
All right.
So the minerals, essential fatty acids, essential amino acids. Oh, the diet. We may have covered all of them. The zinc deficiency. That's kind of a new one. And like I said, people who live in mold tend to get that. But also, Dr. Sam said he had this hypersensitivity issue that I've got at the moment where, like, I get headaches and stuff from perfumes and, like, just all these bodily, very bad symptoms from being around any kind of smell. And Dr. Sam said he got that when he was deficient in zinc. So I've been supplementing with zinc and doing other stuff to help get the crap out of my body from the mold, so hopefully that one will go away. But that was, I don't think he was living in mold at the time. So
that's what's his full name, Dr. Sam?
Dr. Samuel Mielkarski. DrSamPT.com.
All right. Let's see. And are there any, would you like to recommend for the viewers any books along your journey that you would highly recommend that were useful to you? Books or perhaps documentaries or videos on Netflix, stuff that speaks to these issues that you think is really good?
Sure. I recommend Don Bennett's books. They've been the most helpful to me, and I've read a lot of raw food books and I've read other fruit-based books, but kind of my experience and everything that has happened with me just really lines up with everything that Don teaches in his books, and that's at health101.org.
And was he not working on a new complete book, or I know he resisted this for years, a diet book, but is he still working on that? Has he finished that? What's the story on that?
We were talking about that. I'm like, what's the timeline, Dawn? And just the idea that, well, life happens, so when it happens is, when it's done is when it's going to be done.
I mean, he's got so much free information on that site. It's like he's got a book online. But anyway. All right. Well, I guess that's about it. It sounds like you highly recommend the Woodstock Fruit Festival. You've enjoyed that. Was this past summer the first time you went to that?
Yeah, I'd wanted to go for multiple years, and this was my first one, and I loved it.
All right.
I mean, I just loved being, I didn't actually really go to many of the speakers because I was going as a volunteer so that I could afford it, and I just loved hanging out with people and talking to all these people that I've seen on YouTube and Facebook and stuff. It was really great.
We kind of touched on this a little bit. You said for you personally, you came to the conclusion that having even little bits of cooked food in your diet was not really tenable because it made you want other things and it just caused other issues. Would you say, however, in general, that for a vegan, if they want to incorporate some cooked foods, in other words, are you religious about being raw? Do you allow flexibility? Do you think generally the main issue is veganism and people can have some cooked or not? How would you come down on this?
I think people can do whatever they feel led to do. I mean, I just share my personal experience that I feel like my health is not as good if I'm eating cooked foods. I feel like, I mean, even the high-fat raw that I eat sometimes, I mean, I can see an immediate difference in how I feel. But I do eat it because I want to have a treat and I want to stay raw. So, I mean, I can definitely see a difference. And
you mean when you eat high-fat raw, you see a negative consequence?
Yeah, I can see like kind of this. I mean, I can't see it like this cloud comes over my brain.
You feel different. You feel different, kind of slowed down a little bit, or kind of, yeah. I hear you.
Yeah. But I also like what happened to the other thing with the cooked foods was that I could, like, I went to an all-you-can-eat place, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna eat, cooked vegan stuff. I'm gonna eat raw stuff, and just, enjoy myself. So. But I could eat and eat and eat and eat this cooked vegan stuff and never feel satisfied. So I then have to go back and eat raw food in order to feel satisfied. So I'm like, what's the point? I'm eating like 3 times as many calories and it's not contributing to my health. So why don't I just eat the raw? So,
gotcha. Yeah.
I feel like people can do whatever they want to, but I feel like I'm in my optimal health or setting myself up for optimal health if I'm staying raw.
Gotcha.
And it's not, I'm not, if you want to be technical about it, I'm probably not all, I know I'm not all raw because I eat raw nuts that aren't raw,
Right. Do you think a cooked vegan diet is better than a vegetarian diet?
Cooked vegan, I think so because dairy was one of the worst things for me. So for me, definitely. Yeah. Okay. I felt like getting rid of dairy was pretty huge. Okay. It was pretty hard to do, but it also made a huge difference when I did.
All right. And let me ask you a favor. Since you're plugged in with all these other diabetic vegans, I'd love to interview some of them. So if you're in touch with them, tell them I'd love to connect with them.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any other topics you want to add? Like one thing I like to ask people, if you were to broadly give some tips to someone who was considering assuming this lifestyle, what would be some general basic tips you'd give them from the get-go?
Basically, I just kind of go ahead.
They're new to this, and how would you help them?
Well, I've kind of I think there's different personality styles, and my husband and I are, totally different personalities. Like, I'm the kind where I'm going to jump in the pool and get started. Woo! And he's like, he's going to wade in slowly. So we've done, like, he eats a lot like me now, but his transition was very different than mine. I mean, mine was like, let's start now, but then I just had like, oh, I can't do this. Don't, going back and forth.
Is your husband vegan?
He is, yes. And he eats a lot of raw. He still eats cooked food because he has trouble eating enough calories. When he's raw, he gets bored. So it helps him to eat cooked food.
Yeah, I think it's a valid point. I eat a good bit of cooked food, and I feel like, the concentration of calories is so much easier. But I totally hear your perspective, and I respect it. And I know many raw fooders. I mean, you can't argue with the fact that if you compare like the nutrient content of a mango to a bowl of rice, it's not really comparable. But you can with I think cooked carbohydrates. You're easily getting a lot of carbohydrates in a very easy way.
Right.
But so I feel for your husband. I feel for him.
So, I mean, I think it just depends on a person's personality style. I mean, for someone who wants to do it gradually, I've watched him where he just started eating a smoothie a day, or, eating one more orange than he typically would. Let's eat 2 oranges now. I'm like, you ate 2 oranges. Woohoo. One day, like after several years, he told me he ate 5 bananas. I was like, whoa. Now there's me coming from an eating disorder background where I binge, so it's no problem for me to eat these huge amounts of food.
Yeah.
So yeah, if someone wants to do it gradually, adding smoothies is helpful. I mean, I think doing the first meal of the day as fruit is helpful so that we're not eating fruit on top of slower digesting things and causing digestive distress and saying, oh, bananas just terrible for me. Well, if you're eating it after eating a big meat meal, probably it is going to be kind of terrible. So, and if it's
go ahead.
If it's for someone like me that's ready to jump in right now, I think a huge thing is finding a source of good food that you can, that was really big for me when we moved down to Florida. I mean, it was hard at first if you don't have a good source of food that you can afford. And once we got our wholesale order coming in every week, it's so easy. You got all this fruit to choose from, and you don't have to go shopping. It's just really easy. If it's there, you can eat it. If it's not there, then you're going to eat something else.
Right. That's great. And that was kind of my next question. How expensive is it? So you've got a wholesale deal, which must cut costs to a degree. Would you say that it's more expensive to eat a raw food diet, or do you think it's cheaper to eat a raw food diet, or about the same?
Well, it's more expensive.
All right.
Plus all the costs for the supplements I'm taking. It's like sometimes I think, would it be better if I just ate that other food that's fortified with stuff? But no, it wasn't better for me. I had different health problems, so I definitely feel like this is where I need to be. But it's expensive. The wholesale definitely cuts down. We do global organic, and they deliver to like a lot of southern states. That really helps. And then we find we have a Hispanic market near us where the prices are a lot lower. It's conventional stuff, but if you eat the stuff with the skins on, I get a lot of, that's our second best place to go shopping. It's very expensive at grocery stores here. In the Midwest, we always did our shopping at grocery stores here, but the other thing is down here my husband's gotten involved with the Rare Fruit Council, and he's met a lot of people there who grow and sell fruit, and so that's been a wonderful resource where we can meet like lychee farmers and mango farmers, and then you can, get better deals that way too. But at first we didn't know where are we going to meet these people because there's nobody at the farmers markets. It's just all these vegetables. So
that's great. All right. Well, anything else you want to add to close up?
I don't know. It's just a broad question. There's so many benefits to eating this way. I love my life. I never really thought that. I kind of thought, here's something. When I was in my fruit days, and people would tell me like, oh, I don't, if I eat fruit, then it's great. I don't have to eat dessert. And I'm like, are you crazy? Who wants to eat fruit? Like, how is that compared to ice cream? It doesn't. But I think the thing with the ice cream was, addictive substances, and once you eat it, you can't get enough. Whereas now I'm eating all kinds of sugar. Like, I'm eating dates, and it satisfies me, and I don't have any desire for ice cream at all. And so now I get what those people were saying, but back in the days, I'm like, you're just a health freak.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. I think now if I ate a bowl of ice cream, it would be it would have a kind of thick. It would be like eating mucus. It would be. I mean, I used to love ice cream. I used to eat tons of ice cream, but now I can see that it's just too fat. It's too, yeah. But I still, I'll eat avocados or nuts. But yeah, yeah.
I should say that stuff did not stop tasting good. It did not stop smelling good. It smells better than it ever did because I have a sense of smell now.
Yeah.
But, my back and forth, I found, even if it tastes good, I feel horrible afterwards. And
yeah.
That is a really huge, I mean, I can look at the ice cream and it kind of grosses me out, not because it tastes bad, but because I know it's going to make me feel sick.
Yeah, like a hangover, like a food hangover, yeah.
Yeah, and the fruit sweetness, like eating 4 mangoes, oh my gosh, it's delicious. Florida mangoes. You need to try Florida mangoes, okay? But it's, I feel great afterwards. So
yeah.
The taste of that stuff is, it didn't change, and it's still going to be addictive, and it's still, if I still eat it, then it's still hard to stop because it's made to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I just don't even deal with it and just eat good stuff, then it's great.
Are you familiar with Scooby? Are you familiar with Scooby?
Scooby-Doo?
Yes. Well, Scooby. He's this guy. He's a big YouTube presence, and he does weightlifting, and he's kind of a character. But he has this one video. It's if it tastes good, spit it out, and it's all about potato chips and ice cream and M&Ms and all those things that they're designed to taste good, so you keep eating them. They're not. There's no health value to them. Yeah. But
I have a. Oh, was there more on that one?
No. Go ahead.
There's someone that I'm related to is actually a food chemist for Kraft. And I was like, oh, so you designed that addictive macaroni and cheese that I used to eat. And he's like, well, actually, that was my coworker. But I'm like, it's really interesting because that's what they study is how to make it.
This is a crazy thing. It's like, and I'm sure he's a nice guy, but it's like, it's so unethical. It's like, this is killing people. It's destroying their health. And people are getting a paycheck off of making it. It's amazing the disconnect, just amazing.
Well, I think that, there's plenty of science from companies, bad science maybe, that will support, because we talk about, diet now and then, and I talk about my experience and how I've healed a lot of things.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm glad that you're feeling better. But, scientifically, it shows that such and such, and, you don't have anything to back it up. I'm like, well, who's going to benefit from having a study that shows that fruit is healthy? I mean, I don't know.
Exactly. Yeah, banana companies. Yeah. It's crazy. It's fortunate that folks like Dr. McDougall, Dr. Barnard, Dr. Esselstyn, they're starting to accumulate some studies where we actually have healthy vegans in studies to show. I think it's only a matter of time now. As you have these healthy vegans incorporated into these studies, the data is going to be clear cut. Esselstyn, you look at those heart attacks. you can't. There's no other conclusion. You eat that stuff, your chances of a heart attack are greatly increased. I mean, so I think I'm hopeful. I think we're on the cusp. You know,
it's becoming more known.
Yeah. Well, Tasha, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. It's been really fun.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure, real pleasure. So, take care of yourself.
All right, you too.
All right? And